What is the story that people need to stop telling themselves?
that they're so special. I look great for my age. I'm not like other 50-year-old guys. People think that they're so unique and so special and that there's no one that even touches them. And I'm sitting there on a Zoom trying to not laugh because it's like the fifth 50-year-old guy I spoke to that day who's like, I date younger because I have really youthful energy. One time I couldn't even hold it. I was like, listen, I'm just going to be honest with you. That does not make you special. Every other 50-year-old guy I've ever spoken to is exactly like that. Like, if you want to date someone who's 20 years younger or whatever it could be, you can just say that and be real with me. It's not like, oh, because I'm so youthful.
And every
It's not
woman
because,
who will ever listen to this podcast just held her metaphorical lighter up because you are fighting the good fight. And you know what? It goes both ways, right? I'm sure you're
mm-hmm.
telling women as well. That's not realistic. Matchmaking is an industry worth an estimated $1.2 to $1.5 billion globally, with nearly 40% of that market located in the United States. And it's growing while reaching a wider audience both in terms of age and price range. Anna Morgenstern is a high-end matchmaker and dating coach based in New York City. She happened on this career almost by accident while working in advertising when she set up not one or two, but three of her own friends with the people they would eventually marry. She made the jump into matchmaking and eventually launched her own business, gaining a following and clientele nationwide. Nowadays, she's teaching others how to go into the matchmaking world too. On today's podcast, we talk about matchmaking misconceptions, the roadblocks people create for themselves, and whether one must be healed to find love. America is sick of swiping, according to surveys, but it might also be allergic to realistic expectations. Anna talks about the toughest clients she has had, the problem with direct feedback, and the main element she feels is missing in modern dating. She was single herself when she became a matchmaker, but she's learned a lot along the way. And she's sharing it today, along with her advice on the one core trait she would control for above all else when trying to help people find their true partner. If it were only that simple. Well, then she and all the other matchmakers would be out of a job, and I don't think that's happening anytime soon. Thank you for joining Miss Anna Morgenstern, matchmaker and dating coach extraordinaire in the heart of the beast in New York City. What is it like being a matchmaker who's single?
well, I'm not married, but I'm not single.
Mhm.
But yes, it is interesting because I started my whole journey in the dating industry because I was having trouble dating and I had trouble keeping relationships, finding partners that were aligned with what I was looking for, even knowing what I was looking for. Like 6 years ago when I went down this new path, I am just a completely different person of what I'm looking for in someone and even how I see myself. And so it's been kind of a journey for me, and to help other people along the way has been really rewarding, and I love it. But yeah, being single and doing this, it's funny because everyone's like, well, you're saving all the best people for yourself. I'm like, actually, it's the opposite. I tell people, like, just go out with my client first. If you guys don't hit it off, maybe we can talk. But like, no, like clients always get first dibs. And I kind of
But
always
also,
thought
you're
about
not
myself
looking for
second.
quantity, right? You're looking for quality for yourself too. So why would you be saving, a football team worth of
Yeah.
great men for yourself?
Yeah, that's not how it works. But it is nice when you're not married with like a little baby at home because I have the ability to go to lots of events and constantly keep recruiting into my database, which is really important to match clients successfully. You want to be able to have plenty of, high quality people to set them up with. And I love meeting people in person rather than just kind of scraping online trying to find people. Because I like to see how people interact, and that way I can tell, when I set up someone with a client, I can say he was such a gentleman when I met him at this event. He saw I was low on my white wine. He grabbed me another. I like the anecdotal stories of describing someone to a client because I feel like that's what makes you connect with someone's like the feel of them rather than like they went to Princeton, they work in finance. Like that's, could be anybody, but the way someone makes you feel, that's really special.
Can absolutely be anybody. And something there speaks to the trick or the challenge of evolution, right? Because none of us are who we were 10 years ago. And fortunately or unfortunately, people are not um, thinking of dating as something that happened in one phase of their lives. It could happen in their 20s, their
Hmm.
30s, their 40s, their 50s. They could be pre-marriage, post-marriage, single mom, twice divorced dad, God knows what, right? And dating a little bit harder. But what do people get wrong about matchmaking?
I think they have this idea is like, well, who would hire a matchmaker? Someone who's like really desperate or someone who's so unattractive or so not desirable. Someone else has to find them someone to go out with them, which is could not be more opposite from the truth. Most of my clients are so high profile and have almost too many options where they need someone to be like, okay, we're gonna, go through this and find really people really aligned with what you're looking for. Because honestly, it's the paradox of choice when you have too many people to pick from, you can't pick anybody. And I see that a lot with my clients, especially my male clients who are tall, successful, good looking, mid 30s. Everyone's like, why would they need a matchmaker? They keep dating the same women that either leads to heartbreak or their wallet breaking or whatever it could be, the kind of experiences again and again and again. And they want to get out of their patterns. They do want, long-term relationships. And if you're not able to kind of yank yourself out of your patterns, use someone else to kind of help you with that. Um, I'm I'm like that Jewish mom that's like, no, don't do that. Don't fall for that again.
There was an article in The Atlantic yesterday, I think it was published, and the title was America is Sick of Swiping. Isn't
Yeah, I
America
think
sick
that
of
was true
swiping?
before of COVID.
Mhm.
I think before COVID, we saw a decline in dating apps. And honestly, I'm almost like, did Tinder like fake COVID or something? Because all of a sudden, like, did they make this vaccine? No, I kid. But really, honestly, people were over dating apps before COVID. And then with the inability to meet people in real life again, we were kind of forced to get back online to meet people. And we saw a huge increase in the dating app usage. And now, once again, this year, we're seeing a huge decline yet again because now it's just like you don't know who you're talking to the other side of that phone. It could be a completely different person, someone trying to scam you. It could be someone married. It could be an ex-felon. And that's happened to multiple people that I've spoken to. And even myself, I found a scammer on one of the apps once, actually more than once, twice. And I was like, this is not who they're saying they are. It just, you just have to be really careful. And
You
so I think
know,
that's why with matchmaking, we're kind of needed in a way just to be another level of verification.
very needed and very long term. The only bad experience I had with an online date was when someone's pictures were clearly probably about 15 years old. And I almost ended up feeling bad for him because the minute he sat down, he looked at me, he saw my disappointment, and he just kept saying, "My God, you look just like your pictures. My God, you look just like your pictures." And I was like, that's why they were my pictures. You're sort of the poster child for someone whose calling found them. Can you talk about how you became a matchmaker?
Yeah, I think it was just something I was always naturally interested in. Like every book I bought was, like the rules, why men date bitches. Like I was always so interested in like the psychology of dating. Why did this guy choose this girl? And a lot of it came from me. It's like, why did, I had a couple ex-boyfriends that the next person I dated, they married. And it's like, well, why wasn't it me? I was always so
Why am
curious
I the good
with my
luck
own
charm?
life.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of my ex-boyfriends, after dating me and after we broke up, they got rich after, which is probably, I don't know if that's better or worse, but I'm like, where was that when we dated? But no, I was just always so like interested in other people's, like, I think, and if someone has asked me, do you ever get bored of listening to people's stories? I'm like, no, you don't often hear the same story twice. Like people really have interesting stories once they start opening up, especially their family, and people, especially in New York. I mean, to come here, you have to really want to be here and something brought you to be in New York. Like some people are born and raised here, and that's great. But a lot of people, I mean, they have really interesting stories. So I always loved that. And even before making it matchmaking, I was always connecting friends in different cities. If they were traveling abroad, I was like, oh, one of my best friends lives in London. I'm always like to connect people. And I think
Yeah.
some of that stemmed from is, I felt lonely in my life and having someone, just to kind of help me like, oh, you should connect with this person always meant a lot to me. So if I can do that for other people, that kind of fills in my own loneliness void.
So when did you realize that you had a gift for figuring out who was compatible? The first time you introduced someone who got married? The second time? How did that
Yeah,
happen?
well, my one of my best friends in New York, this must have been I don't know, like 8 years ago now, maybe nine. She's Jewish, and she was like, I really want to marry someone Jewish, but she was always meeting these guys that either weren't or were like weird. There's always something wrong with everyone she was meeting. And I was just like, okay, like I'm gonna find you someone. And I was at a bodega like a Saturday afternoon, just grabbing beers. My friend was having a birthday upstairs at his apartment. And this guy behind me starts, making fun of me in line in a British accent. I turn around, he's wearing a big Star of David. I was like, "Oh, you're Jewish?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "I'm going to introduce you to your wife tonight. Go home and change. Put on your best outfit. Here's the address. Here's my number. Text me when you're coming. You're gonna thank me." And he just looks at me like I just was making fun of like your stupid like shirt or something I was wearing. And I was like, "No, you're coming." And so he was just like, "Okay." And I ran upstairs and I told my friend, and I was like, "Go in the bathroom, fix your hair. There's a guy coming for you." And she was like, "What are you talking about?" And sure enough, she's pregnant with her third child now.
Oh, I
And
love
that's when I
that.
was
And are at
like,
least two of them named after you?
this third one, it better be. No, no, none are named after me. Well, and in Jewish culture, you're not supposed to name. Well, I guess it's more with family, not supposed to name someone living because then it means you want them to be dead. But
Okay.
as long as I get to have visitation rights, I'm happy.
Visitation works. So you were single, you started setting people up, you set up maybe four or five couples who got married. At this time, you were going through your own frustration of dating. What do you think is your Achilles heel in dating? We all have one.
Yeah, I was just posting about this on Instagram like last week. As I think there's a couple of different categories where people fall prey to if they kind of get to mid 30s and haven't had an engagement or a marriage yet. And one of them is like prioritizing work or education. Like doctors will be in school for a really long time and then they're not making any money until they're like literally like early 30s. I think that wasn't me. But the second one that I was talking about was staying in relationships or dating people for way too long that aren't appropriate for you, and that was definitely my where was my Achilles heel. I had a couple of different people that I just could not get over, and I would just like cling on to relationships that were very much broken, but the love that I felt, I always wanted to get back to that. And it was, I think a lot of women, especially, they remember what it's like when it was good, and you want to it's like a drug. You want to get back there so badly, but you're willing to be miserable for, months and years for that like 1 week or 1 month where it was good that you want to get back to.
We also try to make it work. We don't expect it to work
Mm.
magically, right? So we try to make it work.
Yeah. And there's also, another one that I was talking about that I think I fell, prey to as well is lifestyle choices. If you're prioritizing travel, going out with friends, drinking, whatever it could be, that's not really setting yourself up to meet someone who's also like, okay, I'm ready to settle down. And, like, because you're going to meet other people in that space, so if you're going out and drinking a bunch, you're going to meet someone else who's also going out and drinking a lot. And, you can have a fun
Mm.
party relationship with that person, but most likely it won't develop into something deeper. Maybe in your 20s, sure, but in your 30s, you're still doing that, then that's not really the best place to meet someone for a long-term relationship. I had a friend in San Diego. She said that she really wants to meet someone who's not a drinker, maybe like very rarely, doesn't do drugs, like a good guy who's ready for a family. And she's like, but I'm not meeting them. I was like, well, where are you going to meet these guys? She goes, bars.
Right. I thought you were gonna say Burning Man. I was gonna say just kick her out. Just kick her out. 'Cause come on.
I was like, why are you going to a bar to meet a non-drinker? That's no. I was like, go to like a golf club. Go to REI. Go to,
Oh,
go
she's not a
do
drinker
something.
herself.
Not really, no. Mm-mm.
So that's interesting.
But
I feel very bad for anybody under the age of 40 because I think there's an entire generation of people who never had the experience due to COVID and due to social media and due to everything else. They never had the experience that me and the rest of my friends had in our early 20s where we were you moved to a city, you got a job, and you started going out all the time. That's what you did, and that's how you met people. Around the fringes, people met someone online, but fundamentally, you met people in the real world, and there's nothing that can replace that feeling, which is why I thought the Atlantic article title was great. America is sick of swiping. Let me
mm-hmm.
ask you this: when you have female clients and male clients, what are your clients most afraid of, and does it differ on gender lines in dating?
Yeah, well, Sometimes, yes and no. It depends on the ages, but I have some male clients that are getting, closer to 50.
Okay.
Some in their 50s, some getting closer to 60, haven't started a family, and they
Mhm.
still hope for that. And it really is like running against the clock.
Mhm.
And I have some female clients that are, getting close to 40, early 40s, and they would love to have a family too. And it's also like you're running against the clock. You feel like, oh my gosh, like you're sweating because you're just thinking about, I have 1 minute left to have a baby. It's like this
Yeah.
internal clock that you give yourself. And both genders definitely feel that, but at different ages, of course, because,
Yeah, for sure.
that's
About
how it is.
25 years apart.
I know, I know. I think there is a fear of being alone, not having that family, but also I think that there's a fear of like, well, what if there's no one for me? What if I'm just looking for someone so specific and there's no one that's going to fit what I'm looking for? And rather than thinking, okay, like, do I need to make changes to if that might be the
Would the
case? It's
problem
more
be
like, well, that's
coming from within the house? Yeah.
it's more of, oh, there's just no, it's a problem with, society. It's a problem with this, it's a problem with that. It's like, well, you can't change any of those things besides you can change yourself. And, so I do see some of that, but I think the biggest fear is definitely the having a family.
What makes me think about something you had posted. You said the reasons, top five reasons why people are single in their mid 30s. Number one, prioritizing work.
Mhm.
Two, staying in the wrong relationship too long. Three, lifestyle choices that don't align with your goals. Four, expectations not based in reality, which is such a tasteful way of saying it. And five, core values not defined. I was reading that and I was just thinking, isn't it just number four? Isn't it just that people's expectations are not based in reality? Because ultimately, I'm not unaware that a lot of people who would date me would not marry me, and a lot of people I would date, I would never marry, right? Or be with long term. I believe that. Don't you think that's the core reason why people aren't settling down? You can spend a lifetime of 6 month increments with lovely people. You can do your little weekend B&B getaways with so many people. And as you get older, you can be hot in that category. You can keep doing it, right? Don't you think that people don't make the effort to make the relationship work if they are with someone truly compatible as at the 6 month mark because they think someone else is going to come and be just a little bit closer to what they want? They always have it in their mind that their expectations should never be failed.
100%. I do think that that one is the expectations not meeting reality is the kind of core reason of why millennials, Gen Z are having trouble dating. Is I think it starts with like all the toxic positivity stuff that we saw throughout COVID, where it's like you are perfect the way you are, never change, you are the best, and it's like okay, but and I noticed it with, now we have way more options than we ever had before with Instagram, with dating apps, Facebook, whatever, LinkedIn. You have access to people you never had access to before, and I see this especially with men. Now like why settle for someone who's probably really matches you, physically, intellectually, when you can have a model. You never had
Right.
access to models before, but now they're on your Instagram, they're on your phone. You have access to all these different models who look super hot. And you're like, wow, this if I get this hot woman, that means that I'm good enough. I'm hot too. Like it's a projection of your insecurity. And I see that a lot with my male clients, especially if they have anything you're insecure about, you're gonna want in the other person really hard. Like if you are a little overweight and that's something that's really tough for you, you're going to say, I want someone with a six pack. I want someone who is so skinny. Da, da, da. And I see it all the time, like, but you're not that. Like, what, because people really have to match one another. And I'm just seeing that again and again with expectations. Like, they're not matching what you are. Like, if you want someone, I see this with women on the other side, they
Mm.
want someone so successful, makes not even as much money as them, but twice what they make. Well, they want this really wealthy guy. It's like, okay, well, what do you bring to the table that's going to counteract that? Because, if we think of dating and matching as like a balance, is like the scales, it can't be like this. It has to match. And, what do women bring to the table? It's like, okay, well, you have to at least be really freaking hot if you're going to get a guy. You have to think, to be realistic about, do the men care as much if you have your MBA? Less so than women do. But I'll have female clients. She's like, well, I have a master's from NYU. It's like, yeah, but the guys that you're showing me that you want to meet, they're going out of Victoria's Secret models. I don't know what to tell you. You have to, the expectations have to meet reality of like what you bring to the table versus what you want to get back.
Well, I mean, there's dating and then there's partnering, right? And for dating,
Hmm.
a lot of us can spackle on enough makeup that the guy who's going out with the models is also going to want to go out with us, and that's fine, right? The key, I think, is learning to be turned off by people who aren't looking for something core to you, right? Learning to be turned off. So the key, I mean, to looking for a long-term partnership is supposed to be having somebody interested in the things that last. And for a lot of people I know, middle-aged women and men, it's easier to give ourselves that rule. It's easier now to be turned off by people who are not interested in the things that we value in our core. And I think it's harder when you're younger, and probably even harder if you come from the world of Instagram and all this stuff that still makes me kind of, it just makes me sad for the next generation. If you could match people up based on one core personal quality, and your database could only control for that quality, what's the
Last one in that Instagram post I put was like core values. Really, what I wanted to say was spirituality, and
mm,
I think that's kind of what's missing in dating is we've become so secular. There hasn't, you know, and well, now we know with the war in Israel, we see Jews coming together more than ever, and now people are really bonding on that. There's something spirituality that I think was missing before that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, God. If that's not your thing, that's fine, but it has to be a connection to something higher than you. And I think if we don't have that, it kind of becomes a little narcissistic. If you think like you're the most important thing, there's nothing more important, and there's nothing above you. And I just kind of see that in dating when people think like I have no reason to change. I'm perfect the way I am. I see that a lot with more
right.
with my male clients, my female clients, but that's why I think you need to have a belief in something bigger than you to kind of have that, I don't know, connection with someone else. I just see those relationships kind of, lasting longer and being deeper. And even in my own life, my exes that were not Jewish, even the ones that were that had atheist, zero belief in anything to do with the actual religion part, we had fun together, but we didn't have that like deep soul connection, And with my current boyfriend, like we go to services together, and I feel so much more connected to him when we do that. We can share that together. And we do Shabbats together. Like that's like the soul connection that I've been yearning for that I've never had with anyone.
You've touched on a couple of things that are making my wheels turn. There's a woman who I interviewed for this podcast named Jody Wellman. She has a book coming out in May called You Only Die Once, which talk about a fantastic title, right? She's a clinical psychologist, and she studies death, dying, and everything around it, right? She studies attitudes towards death. And one of the points that she made as we were talking was that um, if you look across the history of humankind, people were very interested in death. People celebrated it, people talked about it. Memento mori was like a Latin phrase. You have to remember that you must die. And it would make life more important. It would make it clear that your relationships were the only thing that mattered. It was a very clarifying statement to keep in mind for people. For the majority of human history across the majority of cultures that celebrate and talk about the dead. We no longer do that. And I think you can then talk about how it feeds into beauty culture and anti aging culture and all of this nonsense where people who are 60 are trying to look 40 and say 60 is the new 40. No, it's not. And so our conversation went all the way from that to how I think our fear of death, where a fear of death and our fear of being inconsequential is sort of making us start to numb ourselves, and numbing ourselves is preventing us from living, right? But it all goes back a little bit to culture. And when I think about dating these days, and I think about coupling up for the rest of my life, or getting married again, or what have you, my mind goes more to my children, right? The next generation and what's going to happen. And if you look at the historical universe of marriage, right? Originally, of course, it was just financial. But if you just look at three generations in America, our grandparents' generation, my grandparents weren't in America, but let's talk about the people in America. Grandparents in America, that was the first generation where they had to figure out how to do marriage without extended family nearby. They were the first generation that got married, moved somewhere else. So it was the concept of figuring out marriage in the context of nuclear family, right? For our parents, I think it was the first generation in America that had to figure out marriage in the context of birth control. and women working for the first time and having equivalent education, which meant women married later, they had more choice, and they could leave, right? Our generation, I think, is the one that has to deal with marriage in the context of marrying people we don't know, because we're the first group that dated everyone. I don't know anyone in New York who didn't date every nationality, who did completely different walks of life. And we all thought, well, oh, they're a great boyfriend. They'll be a great husband. Well, we were wrong, right? She was a great girlfriend, and we solved all the problems of living together so we can do parenthood together because we're rational people. That's not how it works. My belief is that once you get married and start having children and stuff gets hard, people default, people regress to their default setting. And I think their default setting is their childhood, their community, and just how their parents treated each other. The problem is you
Mm.
can never really know that because no one's going to articulate it until they're faced with decisions that are going to be informed by those things. So it makes me wonder, as a matchmaker, what do you think is the future of marriage in America? How's it going to look if a generation like our children, right? My kids are elementary school age right now, are watching us. 90% of people in my generation are getting divorced. I don't know, something like that, right?
I saw a stat that said 70% of divorces are initiated by women. I think whenever there's a big swing one way with anything in society, we would see a swing the other way. And I saw something that millennials are actually saving the divorce rate, but also maybe a lot of them aren't old enough to be getting divorced yet either. But millennials are bringing the divorce rate down. So we'll see. But I think whenever there is such a emphasis on the individual versus like society, community, even like in religion, we're like, well, what's best for me rather than how can we work together to get, to make, so I think it really depends on what the mindset's going to be then. I don't know, but I think marriage has been around for a very long time. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think that as humans, we want to mate, we want to live with a partner, we want to have a family. That's something that's important. And I do think that maybe, children growing up in homes where they're seeing more divorce, they're not seeing as much love, they're going to want that even more because they didn't see that. And, of course, we can't help our subconsciously, how we internalize things and we bring that into other relationships. But I think with therapy, it being so much more mainstream than it was for, you know, like even like 10 years ago versus now, I think everyone I know is in therapy. Has talked at some point has talked to a therapist at some point or another, So I think at least there is this movement towards self-work and making yourself better and being more self-aware, which is only going to make you a better partner for the future. So I'm hopeful. We'll just have to see,
Sometimes
I
I do
guess.
think what you're saying is going to happen. I like to believe what you're saying is going to happen, and there's this whole generation of kids who are in elementary school, my kids' age right now, who are going to see all of the stress and all of the self-questioning in middle age and all of the glow ups and then blow ups and this and that and etc., and are going to go at it without such a playful hedonistic approach towards dating. And maybe the next generation then gets married younger. Maybe they all go off to college with this idea of, wait a minute, I want to do it like my grandparents did, but I want to do it better. I want to take the best of what my grandparents had, the best of what my parents could have had, and put it together and meet my sweetheart in college and build a life. And maybe they get married younger, which would actually be wonderful for the middle-aged moms like me, because then we won't be dead when their grandchildren are born, right? So let's
I know
hope for
my mom
that. I
reminds
hope,
me of that.
yeah, I vote for
Yeah,
that.
I really think so. And there, I don't. Love is something that's so intrinsic to all of us. It's something we always will be seeking, we'll always want, and I don't think that's ever going to go away. But yeah, I'm trying to get that grandbaby for my grandma too, or my mom too, because she's warning me. Same
I
thing.
can listen. Grandkids are everything, and my parents' connection to my kids is everything. They actually
Hmm.
talk to them every morning. We FaceTime during
Oh,
breakfast. And it gives
it's
Mama a
cute.
chance to do her makeup because I put out the breakfast and then I put Grandma and Grandpa up on FaceTime and then I get my coffee and put on my makeup like a normal human being as opposed to frenzied while someone's blowing their nose on my shirt, right? Like I get to calmly be. I get time for the 3 layers of moisturizer because Grandma and Grandpa have a
Yeah,
5 minute FaceTime in the morning.
virtual babysitter.
It's wonderful. Do you agree with the idea that people need to be healed before they find their person? You could spend your life trying to heal yourself. And you, as a matchmaker, probably have a lot of people coming to you who have, I would assume, self perception across the spectrum. Some of them think they need healing, some of them think they're fully healed, some of them want to talk about healing to the point where nobody wants to go out with them because they don't want to talk about it anymore. Do you think people need to be healed to meet their person?
I think you need to have self-awareness. And that could come from healing past traumas, wounds, or that could just having a real, look at yourself and like, who potentially could I really realistically end up with? For most of us, seeing our parents fight when we're younger isn't enough of an excuse to be an asshole in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that, we need to take accountability and blaming our parents for everything or, well, it's not fair. I agree. We all have something that could make us act a certain way, but we're adults. We know better. And I think most of us, we're probably can be fine to be in a relationship without, having years and years of therapy. You just have to be really realistic of like, how do I treat people? How do I speak to people? A lot of feedback that I'm hurting people's feelings. Am I taking that feedback and like learning from it? It's difficult to hear things about yourself that you need to change or make better. But really it's a gift. And if someone cares enough about you to say like, hey, listen, like, you kind of made me feel a certain way when you said this, that should be enough for you to say, like, okay, I need to change that. And, to be a better partner in the future. I think most of it is just reflecting. And that's why I think it's really good to actually write it out, like do journaling and really say like, look at my past 3 relationships. What are the patterns? Why did I initially like this person? What was it like being with them? How did I feel? What's some feedback they gave me while I was in a relationship with them? Why did it end? How did I deal with that breakup? Did I immediately jump in a relationship? Did I eat ice cream for a week and then moved on? Like, well, really like write these things out because you'll start seeing patterns and you'll see places where like, oh, I keep dating guys that have constantly made me feel really bad about the way I look or whatever it could be. And it's like, I don't want that anymore. And I think it's really powerful to have that data to make better decisions in the future because, just a lot of us are dating because we're attracted to someone rather than
Mm-hmm.
thinking like, okay, how do I really feel with them? Is this a good partner for me? We go based of like initial attraction, like, oh, I want to make out with him,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
We
good. You
need to
want to have that,
normalize it.
but
We need to normalize calling that entertainment, that I'm looking for entertainment, and then normalize calling looking for a relationship seeking, because they're very,
yeah,
very
Esther Perel says that. She says
different.
you can have lots of love stories, but who can you have a life story with? It's very
Yeah.
different.
It's
So,
essentially, it makes me think of
mhm.
the movie uh, Diane Keaton and what's his name, and then they fall in love, and then he is dating her daughter. What was the movie?
Oh, I think
You
I
know what
know
I'm
what
talking
you're
about?
talking about.
It wasn't as good as it
Not as
gets,
good as it
right?
gets. Is that it?
Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah.
one where she falls in love with him and he falls in love with her and it takes them forever to get
Hmm.
back together with each other. That's the example of the cad who goes and gets in touch with all the women he's dated before and says, what's the common denominator? I'm the problem. And then finally one woman tells him everything he did wrong and he starts to see the pattern, right? But
Hmm.
most people aren't going to do all that. It makes
I
me
would think
think of,
we should normalize that. We should
we should,
normalize getting
absolutely.
feedback after dates.
Relationship inventory, relationship scorecard, midlife relationship scorecard. Can
Exit
we cover
interviews.
it? Can we
Yeah.
cover that? We have to get in touch with everybody we've ever dated and have them fill out a 5 question questionnaire and it says, "What do you think I did to self-sabotage?"
Yeah, or just
Right?
like, any feedback to make me a better dater in the future.
Yeah.
That's what I love about matchmaking is I get to get that data from people because I've had clients where they really didn't realize, that they were doing things that inadvertently were turning people off. I had one female client she was stunningly beautiful
Mm-hmm.
and she had 2 dates with 2 different guys and they were so excited to meet her and then neither of them wanted a second date with her. And then I had called them both back. I was like, I need details. And they're like, let's just say I could tell she was a therapist on the date. I was like, what do you mean? It's like she sat there with her arms crossed, didn't give me nothing, about herself. She wasn't vulnerable, just asked me questions. It just felt very like I was at a therapy session. And I called her, like, do you know you're doing this? And she had no idea. And I was like, okay. You have to be vulnerable. When they reveal something, you reveal something. They're not your therapy clients. And then she had one more date after that. And as far as I know, they're still dating. So,
But she's open to the feedback. Not everybody's going to
yes.
be, right?
Oh, I had one male client. He didn't speak to me for 2 weeks after I gave him feedback.
What was the feedback?
It wasn't romantic. It wasn't flirty. It wasn't like, oh, he wasn't building an idea of like what life with me would look like. She was like, yeah, we talked about 9/11 for a while. He was complaining about work. He just
God.
seemed very effeminate. I asked him, I was like, what? You guys were talking about 9/11? He goes, she asked me about it. I'm like, how would she know to ask you about 9/11 unless you told her that you're working downtown during 9/11? And as a normal human being, you have to say, oh my gosh, tell me your story. Like she would just say, like, oh, cool. She, of course, is going to ask about it. But why would you talk about that on a first date? And I was like, did you complain about your job? He's like, well, my work isn't going well right now. I was like, she's a stranger. She doesn't need to know that. Women want to feel security on a date. They want to be with someone who feels secure, like, okay, if I have a family with them, I will, my kids will be taken care of. I'll be taken care of. He's stable. Like they want to know these things. And you did the exact opposite. It's like, you have a hedge fund. You do well. Like
Right.
you had a bad week at work. You're not like going,
Well, and not
yeah,
that it's not stressful, but the point is she's not your person yet. It's not to speak about. What I noticed
it's
in that
inappropriate.
is that he was defensive against his own uh, uh, matchmaker, which is just a really, really bad sign.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because he's very against any kind of like therapy or any kind of, people that are really into meditation or self work. He doesn't like those kind of people because he's not ready for that kind of feedback for himself. And I just want
Mm,
to shake him and be like, this is why you're single. So,
yeah.
and we're working on it. We're massaging him into it. He's getting better, but it's been tough.
I interviewed another woman for the podcast, Dr. Amanda Hansen. She's known as the Midlife Muse. And she has this quote where she says, never make, never allow a man to use his childhood as an excuse for shitty behavior, right? And I love that, but it's also never allow a woman to use her childhood as an excuse for shitty behavior. It's about accountability, right? For how you treat people, especially at a certain age. There's a freedom in, again, middle age to being able to just call people out on it and say, like, you know what? Um, Thank you for the evening. We're not a fit. Like, God bless, right? Because what I'm thinking is, if you can't take basic accountability at this age, then, I could go be somewhere else right now.
I think eventually you lie to yourself so much you buy your own bullshit. I really do. I think you just kind of convince like, no, I'm not in the wrong here. I am allowed to, you just kind of talk yourself into being right and you're not allowing anyone to say anything outside of that. So I do think they're kind of deluding themselves. It's like they're brainwashing them. I don't know. And that's why a lot of those people are so avoidant from any kind of therapy or self work or any kind of anything that, calls for self reflection because they don't want to disprove the lies that they've told themselves.
You come off like such a New York matchmaker, and I love it because I'm a New Yorker, right? Who are the clients you won't take on?
I have two basic rules about clients. First is they have to want monogamous relationships. And the second is they have to be nice to me. Like if it's a man, like I want the way he speaks about women to be very respectful. I mean, I had a client where I had to tell him, you don't talk about women that way. And I know like you're joking, like calling them hoes or bitches or whatever.
It's
No,
not
like
funny.
it's not funny. It's not okay. And maybe I laughed a couple of times. I was like, oh, and I enable that behavior. And I have to be really careful and make sure that I am careful with what I say and what I'm laughing at, what I'm, saying is okay, basically. And so I had to, say like, don't say that. Like it's bad energy. You don't want to put that out there because a woman who's really self-assured and has a high self-confidence and esteem, she's going to hear that and be like, you're a loser. I'm not dating someone who speaks at women that way. So
Mm,
it's
sense.
that's yeah. So it's important for me to make sure that I'm not getting any weird feeling or any kind of something in my stomach that's like, oh, this feels off. Because I've definitely not listened to that before, and I've had to refund people.
Wow. Imagine being fired by your matchmaker. That's a bad
Uh,
day.
Usually it's mutual, like it's sometimes it's my fault where I'm not clearly saying upfront, like if these are the preferences, they cannot change. Because I had a client, she was like, okay, um, I'm interested in this. And then she started sending me leads of guys that she could never get dates with on her own. So to ask for me to do that, it was like, I'm not a miracle worker, like you have to realistically be able to attain a date with this guy on your own. And rather than like, oh, I was shooting for the moon, like, oh, see if she can, get it for me. She was like, I only want you to send me unicorns. Like, that's what she literally said. And like,
What's she
I'm not
saying?
a, I'm like, well, I'm not a unicorn hunter, and they're mythical creatures that don't exist. And I saw the guys that she was going out with; they were nothing like the guys she was sending me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the point
So,
is, um, a unicorn doesn't want to date it. A unicorn doesn't want to be perceived as a unicorn. They want to just be John to the woman they love, right?
hmm
So she has to be of that caliber in that universe or at that vibration, whatever you want to call it. The transactional nature of relationships is what's ruining everything, right? Because if this was 100 years ago and you were a matchmaker, you would be able to ask me five things. Anyone, right? Age, children's situation, income, lifestyle, religion. Then having a conversation, you'd get to know my personality, whether I thought I was funny, whether you could set me up with someone who might think I'm funny, whatever it is, right? And that would
hmm
be it. But now people have got a list of 27 things. Um, what is the story that people need to stop telling themselves?
that they're so special. I look great for my age. I'm not like other 50-year-old guys. It's people think that they're so unique and so special and that there's no one that even touches them like even close. And I'm sitting there on a Zoom trying to not laugh because it's like the fifth 50-year-old guy I spoke to that day who was like, but I date younger because I have really youthful energy and I do this. And it's like, one time I couldn't even hold it. I was like, listen, I was like, I'm just going to be honest with you. That does not make you special. Every other 50-year-old guy I've ever spoken to is exactly like that. Like, if you want to date someone who's 20 years younger or whatever it could be, like you can just say that and be real with me. It's not like, oh, because I'm so youthful. Just be real.
And every
It's not
woman
because,
who will ever listen to this podcast just held her metaphorical lighter up because you are fighting the good fight. And you know what? It goes both ways, right? I'm sure you're
hmm
telling women as well. That's not realistic,
yeah, I mean,
right?
you see so many women that are getting close to 40 and they haven't been married, they haven't had kids, and they're so like desperate for a child. It's like there are guys you could have met along the way that you probably could have had a child with. Like I said, if you were, work or education, that's the only real kind of excuse that I kind of give people. If you were in school for like 10 years because you're becoming like, oncologist or something, I'll give you that.
Mhm.
But if you were just, partying with your friends and this guy's not good enough and that guy's not gonna like you did this to yourself. Like I can't stand when people say like there's no good men out there, there's no good women out there, there's no one serious. No one wants it's like they're out there. You're just not giving them a chance because you see yourself as you did when you were 28. It's like, well, we're 38 now. I am 38, so I can say this. Like what you can realistically get might be a little different, and what you want. Like when I was dating at 28, I was not thinking of like, oh, he's going to be a great father. He's going to make sure the mortgage is paid on time. That's not what I was thinking. I was like, wow, I have so much fun going out with him. So it's different. We can't have that same mentality into our 30s and 40s. I where that world changes, which is that's why I love people that are dating like 50 plus, because then I feel like it's kind of like dating in high school again, where you're like, okay,
Mhm.
kids are off the table, most of them are already out of the house, and you can really just have fun again. And things that are like, okay, where do you go to school? Where did it, like all the checklist things are less important. It's more of like, I have so much fun with him. Like we're like holding hands at the movies. We're going here, we're going there. Like it's really cute. And I'm like, okay, there you can be more superficial, because you're not necessarily trying to get married again or whatever. That is like, especially when they're in their 70s and they're dating, that is like the cutest, sweetest thing. That's my favorite age group.
70s. I love
And
it.
oh, oh, I had one woman, she was 70 and her husband died of cancer and she's like, I waited a year and I took care of him while he was sick. After he died, she waited a year. And she's like, I'm really, really wanting like a partner. I haven't had a partner in a long time because he was sick.
Mm.
And she's like, I just really want someone to travel with and cook with and just, someone to do things with, like companionship. And she's like, I live in New York, but I'm open to someone, anyone, New York area. I have a son in DC and a son in San Francisco. So I'm open to any of those areas. So I set her up on 3 dates. One with a guy in Connecticut, one with a guy in DC, and one in San Francisco. And she met all three relatively quickly and within like the same month. And I asked her, okay, like, which one are you picking? Which one are you going to keep dating? She's like, pick one. What are you talking about? I'm dating all three.
I love it. I love
She's
it.
like, I have a DC boyfriend. I have a San Francisco boyfriend. I have a guy here.
Go, grandma, go.
I
You
know.
know?
I
I
was
love
just
it.
like, my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe it. I was like, you know what? It's like, what? Why not? They have different rules. The
Yeah.
seniors have different rules, and I love it. I think it's so funny.
Well, I
But
must
yeah,
say,
good for him.
look, I'm in my now late 40s and I have kids. I think it makes dating a lot easier because I don't need anything from anybody, and not in a I don't need anybody kind of way, but in a genuinely life is wonderful kind of a way.
Hmm.
So either we can
Yeah.
be buddies and we can genuinely enjoy each other and you give me a reason to put on a nice dress, or, best of luck. Maybe I know somebody for you. But
Hmm.
there's no stress, there's nothing adversarial about it, there's nothing about being chosen anymore.
Hmm. That's what's interesting about dating is that it's very patriarchal, right? They ask us on a date. They ask
Mhm.
us to be in a relationship. They ask us to marry them. And then, we don't have any kind of choice in the matter. It's a lot of my friends, clients, they wait for the guy to say, I love you first. All these things where it's like we wait for the guy to kind of initiate. And honestly, I think it's okay for women to do the choosing too. Like you're 50% in this relationship as well. Like it doesn't have to be like, I have no say in the matter. I have to wait for, I don't like that. I think if you want something, go get it. I think there's a difference between, initiating something versus being really aggressive as a woman. I don't think that's the right thing to do. But I think if you see someone that you think's attractive at a party or a bar or whatever it could be, like go up to them and say hi. He's probably going to be pretty happy. Like most women I get talked to a lot, spoken to by random guys at bars, whatever, all the time. So sometimes they get annoying for us. Men don't have that problem as much. So when it happens to them, they love it, whether the
And
woman's
if nothing
attractive or
else, you're
not.
going to make their day.
Yes, exactly. So I always tell female clients, like, there's lots of little like things you can say and do to kind of create those situations. And, don't wait just to, make eyes at a bar and hope he comes over. Like, go over there.
Yeah, making eyes at a bar. Does anybody do that anymore?
Oh, yeah.
I miss my early 20s. Yeah, I do.
Hey, we can go out. We can practice.
All right, we'll practice. We'll do flirting 101 again. No, I remember, I just think as it gets as you get further into your life, you already are who you are. So the chances that whomever you are going to meet at a bar, at a party, will be compatible with your life are slimmer and slimmer when you do have
Hmm.
a career and children and all those types of things. So even if you're not looking to be saved, basic compatibility narrows the pool even in the busiest
Yeah,
city on earth, right? Which is why we need
totally.
matchmakers. I'm curious with your clients, what is the youngest male client you've ever had?
Well, I had one male client. He came to me, I think he was 28. He he was education and work. He, studied really hard. He played a sport in college, so he was always just like busy, busy. And then went to private equity. He was working till midnight, 1 a.m. all the time. And then finally at 28, he got, promoted enough where he was in a place where he has people underneath him to do the 12 a.m., 1 a.m., work that needs to be done. So he's like, okay, I finally have time to date. I have some money saved. I can, finally put myself out there. And he's like, I've never really dated, so I don't even know, I don't know what I like. I don't know who's a good, match for me. Like I know
Oh,
things
he's a
that I know
bunny.
who I am.
Oh,
Yeah, he's like a little baby. And so he's like, this is who I am. This is things I like to do. Like, who do you think is a good match? He's like, I honestly don't even know. And so from working together, he had experiences to meet different kinds of women. We really experimented. It was really fun. More artsy girls, more business, more, like different kinds of like personality types. And we had so much fun with it. So yeah, I like when they're like kind of new on the scene. It's fun. I can help
yeah.
guide like a nice little gentleman into the world.
Oh, help him get his training wheels off. It's a little bit surprising because I worked in private equity. I remember everybody flirting left, right, and sideways, but maybe that was,
His firm, there were no women. It was
that'll
men.
do it.
Yeah.
That'll do it. Yeah,
I think
because
last year was the first year they hired any women.
lovely.
It was small. Yeah.
Lovely.
Probably
Well,
changes the dynamics there.
so we covered what people are afraid of. We covered the story that they need to stop telling themselves, which I love, by the way. Um, if you were getting into matchmaking now versus was 6 years ago you started, how is it different?
I think matchmaking is more mainstream in a way where more people have had experiences with matchmaking. So there's good and bad with that because I would say 75% of the time when I've asked someone if they've ever spoken to a matchmaker before and they say yes, it was a bad experience. So
Mm.
sometimes you're working up against like an uphill battle because they're like, oh, I worked with this matchmaker. She did not like any, she did not listen to any of my preferences. It was a horrible experience. And even before I did this professionally, I had one matchmaking experience. I was set up by a matchmaker and I was like the free person that went out with a paying client, and it was not a good experience.
Mm.
It wasn't like, I don't think they tried to purposely make it bad, but their process, like I didn't get to see a photo of who I was meeting. They lied about how tall he was. They didn't plan the date for us. So it was an hour before he told me where to go. So it's like, and the place he wanted to go, we couldn't even sit there anyway. So we're like walking around. I was like, this could have been a
Mm.
so much more curated experience if they had
Seamless.
just, planned the date for us. They showed me what he looked like so I wouldn't be like disappointed when I showed up. And yeah, I was like, God, I could have done this so much better. So now I think most people have had one or two experiences with matchmakers or matchmaking, or if they had a friend that's had experience. So they kind of, either they have some kind of idea about it, and usually it's negative. So starting today, you have to make sure you're giving them a good experience because people are like one experience away from I'm never doing this again. That makes me sad that they're going to be closed off to something. And I've had people say no to talking to me because they've had a bad experience in the past. I'm like, I could have set you up with someone amazing, but
Yeah.
ultimately it's up to them if they want to move forward or not.
How many clients a year would you say you work with?
I usually have about 10 to 15 active clients a year.
Mhm.
I tend to enjoy working with male clients more. But lately I've had really amazing female clients. So, you know, I had a rule where I would not work with women under 40 because they were so mean to me for so many years.
Really?
Yeah, well, the expectations not meeting reality, putting so much pressure on me, being like, "You're my last hope of having a baby." So, if I worked with female clients, who are usually like already married, had kids, or a little bit older, and they were always fabulous, and I loved all of them. But my younger ones were the ones that I would have like anxiety over and couldn't sleep at night.
Hmm. What's the most frustrating part about what you do?
Hmm. I think what's most frustrating is when I feel like there's a really good match, and for whatever reason, the client says no to meeting that person. And it could be like, oh, I'm not attracted enough, or oh, I saw them on an app and we had a weird exchange once 3 years ago. It could be like all these silly reasons of saying no to meeting someone. And I get like, they spend a lot of money. So they want to make sure each match is going to be a really high quality match, someone that can have, a relationship with. And I know they know themselves better than I'll ever know them. So I do respect when they want to say, they want to pass on someone. But sometimes I'm sitting there thinking, just please meet them. This
Mm.
person's so like good for you. So that's the most frustrating part for sure.
So I don't know what percentage of people are currently on dating apps, right? In the major cities in their 20s, 30s, 40s, but do you think the future of dating and the future of seeking love is more 50-50 matchmaking and social events? What do you think it is? Because people are getting sick of the apps.
For sure. I think that I've personally seen a huge uptick in events, especially in New York, where people just anything you're interested in, there is a group for that. So like pickleball, walking, running, anything in like religious sectors, anything in spirituality, meditation, like there's something literally for everyone. And there's going to be some kind of event around that. So I do think that there's way more opportunities, even before COVID, of finding your people in life, in real life. But the dating apps are convenient, and I don't think they're going anywhere, for a long time. I do think that they're for some people they have really good experiences meeting people on apps, and we don't want to take that away from them. Other people have really frustrating experiences on them. Some people have a mixture of both. So that's like I tell my friends and clients, if you have a good experience, keep doing it. If you're having really difficult experiences, use doing anything, like even going to the same event again and again, not meeting anyone there, stop going there. Like, nothing has to be like black and white, 100%, 0%. So I think having multiple dating apps is where people kind of go wrong when you have too many places of like, of getting rejected and having a bad experience in multiple, different apps. I think it's best to maybe have one, maybe two if there's something that's more specific. Like there's even a dating app for people that go to like the gym that and you can see who's like checked in at the gym that you're at. So there's literally something for everyone.
Now you're giving me flashbacks to living in LA in the early 2000s, and the Sports Club LA was probably the most active dating scene of anywhere on earth that I have ever seen. I'm pretty sure everyone dated everyone. I don't think anybody ever broke a sweat. It was fantastic. So
I love
despite my
that.
flashback, I have a proposal for you. You tell me what you think about this. So I've been thinking about dating events in New York City. I want a professional's opinion. What would you think about a dating event, sort of like a speed dating event? Maybe people don't have to sit down at tables, but it's curated by age and maybe one or two other characteristics, like everyone already has to have children or something like that. And then you get maybe 25 men, 25 women in a room, and at the end of which everyone says yay or nay with their interest. Anyone who gets 80% of the people in that room saying yay to them gets invited to a second tier event, and so on and so forth, such that people get put into tiers based on reality, not based on their hopes and wishes and dreams, right? Um, and then there is a stratification for dating, and people are more likely to actually find someone who will be with them long term. Am I crazy?
I actually like that because you're putting accountability back on the table. So if you're at this event, you have to, present yourself a certain way. You have to make sure you're respectful, and you can't be getting drunk and saying crazy things because you're not going to be, into the next tier because of that. So I think it's a great idea. There were apps that people were creating a long time ago where like people could rate you based on
Mm.
like your profile and you can get like feedback and stuff, but none of those really took off because I think a lot of people don't want that sort of feedback. So
That's
you'd have to
based on
find a
real
way
life,
for,
though, not based on a
yeah,
profile. My point is based on real
yeah.
life. I'm trying to suggest something where your actual chances of being chosen, wanted, dated again are what put you to the top of the heap. Not just that you are 6'5" and athletic and wealthy, but nobody wants to talk to you because you give everybody the creeps. Then you're not in top tier.
Hmm.
No matter how much money you throw at the organizer of the event, you're not invited to tier two.
Oh, I like it.
Okay.
Sign me up.
What are we going to call it?
Ooh, um, I'll have to brainstorm on that. But I find that people are more likely to go to like singles type events if it's not directly labeled like a singles event.
Yeah.
Because then their connotation is like, oh, it's like losers are going to be there. So if it's
Right.
something that's more of like, or there's like a secondary element to it where it's like, there's animals or I don't know, whatever. There's some other kind of element to it, and people are kind of like, oh, we're whatever. So it can't be too obvious that it's a singles event in the name.
All right. All right. So we'll call it Poonam and Anna's Eliminating Goat Yoga Meetup. Is that good?
I love
Something
it.
like that. All right. Okay. And then you have
Yeah,
to get yeses from 80% of the people. Look at that. We just solved the problem. We solved love.
and we're gonna have to find some goats.